2, 1.
Hello, and welcome to Taking Power BI to the Next Level. I'm Ed Watson, Principal Consultant with Improving. I'm Microsoft Data Platform MVP. Here's my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me after the presentation. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, send me an email. It's also an IA Helps email address here if you'd like any help with Power BI. We'd love to help you at Improving. And I'm glad you're here today, and I hope you're safe and healthy and ready for some learning. So let's get started. Here's our agenda today. So I like random agenda items. Land use planning, the devil's in the details, and color is more than a reflection of light. So let's get started with land use planning. With Power BI and other reporting tools, we have a limited canvas. Although Power BI is interactive, we still are limited by the amount of desktop space that we have. This is often referred to as real estate, and therefore when you build a Power BI report, you are in essence a land use planner. If you're not familiar with this job, the planner is someone who looks at population, traffic, environment, many other factors to determine how to use the parcels of land in their community. They are people, that say no to putting a chemical plant, for example, in the middle of a suburban neighborhood. So imagine your community is essentially your Power BI report that you inherit from your company or that you build from scratch. Someone tried to stick a chemical plant in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Let's fix that. How do we do that? Let's start with math. Why? Because I love math. As you can see here, every standard Power BI report uses a 16:9 aspect ratio, and that's 1280 pixels by 720 pixels. So the 16:9 aspect ratio is also known as high definition, HD. That's right, Power BI is using HDTV standard layout for a 21st century aspect ratio. So what does that mean for you? Your limited real estate is set to 1280 pixels by 720 pixels. No more, no less. That is our real estate. And so as we're going through this today, feel free to put any questions you have in the chat room, and our great assistant Justin will interrupt me and we can answer that right away. So 1280 by 720. So we use math to figure out where we're going to put things on our screen. Now we know how much real estate we have, and we know what visuals we need. So we're going to use math. Here's a sample. This is a generic report or a land use plan. Picture these visual 1 through 4 are actual visuals. Let's say bar chart, a line chart, a table. The blue area represents the real estate that we've marked off. So in this example, and this is how I like to do reports if at all possible, I like to put a title header at the top, which gives me space to put the title, a little bit of explanation about the report, maybe a couple of slicers, and maybe a couple of metric cards. Nothing too bold or obtrusive, but sometimes, we want totals and KPIs at the top. And then we want to leave room in our land use plan for the big, bold, beautiful visuals that we're going to present. So every report that we do tells a story, and it should tell a story. Every report that you do should tell a story such that there are actionable items. When someone views your report, they should be called to action to perform whatever story that you're telling them. If you're just putting visuals on the page for sake of having visuals, that's not really effective storytelling. If the story is we need to do better in our sales, that's the story we need to tell, and we need to present the visuals in such a manner that it tells that story. So they need to be related, they need to be effective, so it's not just a bunch of data on the screen that someone's gonna view and not feel called to action. So I hope that makes sense. So in this section, notice we have the header, but the 4 visuals. So when I say we love math, we want to kind of calculate roughly what our dimensions are going to be. So every visual and every item in Power BI has dimensions. And they're shown here in the middle of the blue area to give you an idea. So if this visual 1, for example, was a bar chart, this would be its dimensions. So it would be at this X and Y position, 10 and 105. This is how wide it would be, and this is how high it would be. So we can easily get those over on the right-hand side in the visualization tab by choosing general and then looking at our dimensions. So if we know that we're going to put 4 visuals on a screen, we can put them out there initially, just drag them over, find a spot. But then we need to go one by one and make sure that these are the correct dimensions. The reason being, a lot of times when you just put them on there and they're not exact, the brain processes that either the items aren't symmetrical, they aren't lined up, something's off. So if we're being effective storytellers, we're not doing our job there because something else has caught the attention of the user. And it's usually one visual is a little off to the left and the other one's a little off center. And those things are subtle, but your brain picks up on those, and instead of viewing the story that I'm telling, your brain is saying, why does this report look off? So it misses the whole purpose of the story. So we want to be very intentional with our dimensions and making sure that everything lines up. So the easiest way to do that is to get in the habit of these dimensions and going back to math. So remember, we have 1280 pixels wide. We know that we're going to do 2 visuals across. So as you see, we have a width of 625 because we want to leave 10 pixels on the left, on the right, and in between. So that leaves us 1250 for our 2 visuals. That'd be 625 each, right? Simple math, but it works. So same thing if we had 5 visuals. We want maybe 3 on the top row or 3 on the bottom row, depending on the importance in your story. So if that were the case, let's say we were putting 3 on the bottom row, we would need our 10 pixels on either side, leaves us 1260. We're going to need 2 barriers because we have 3 visuals, so that's another 20 pixels. So now we're down to 1240. So that leaves us 1240 for 3 visuals. So we could do 413 for 2 of them, and then 414 for the middle one. They're not perfectly even, but that's as close as we can get because it's math and we're dividing by 3 into an even number. So those are the kinds of things you need to look at and think about when you're planning out your report initially. How to make everything symmetrical, how to make it look right. So if you're off by a pixel in that case, it's going to be hard to see and it's not really going to be picked up. But if they're off, like 2 of them are lined up and it's over, your brain's going to figure that out. But it's still going to look centered. That's the point I was trying to make. We need the little bit of pixels in between because we don't want to overlap, and we don't want to, when there's layering in Power BI, and if we overlap, we get into problems with our layering. We're trying to pick a slicer and it's laying on top of a visual and it's selecting a different item on the screen, it just becomes messy at that point. So we want to keep everything separated with a little bit of space in between. So hope that makes sense. I think that's pretty much it for, we want to give a little bit of room for a header. What I see a lot of times in Power BI reports that I see, people tend to not really put much emphasis into the layout of where they're placing visuals. We read in the Western Hemisphere from left to right, down and across. So if you're trying to tell an effective story, you want the upper left-hand corner to be your most important piece of data. So this visual 1 here, for example, is the most important one to tell our story. And visual 4 is the least important. It's related, but maybe it doesn't have as much power as the other visuals. We don't want our most important piece of data in the visual 4 spot. It may not even get seen by the user. So keep that in mind when you're laying these out. And also that kind of plays into why we have a smaller title header, because it's not really important, that top piece. We want it kind of subtle. We need to know the title, what we're looking at, but we need to get to our data. We want bigger visuals so that we can see. And you run into trouble if you do too many visuals because of cognitive overload. We don't want to have so many visuals that it becomes overload for the user, because that's also not an effective storytelling. We want big visuals that are easy to read. Pretend like you're in a boardroom and this is being shown on a projector. You want people in the back of the room to be able to see the visual and understand it completely. We're telling a story. So let's move on to a couple of samples. Here we see sales metrics. Okay. This is a report that we've inherited. In this case, if you're following along at home, this data is Worldwide Importers, which is a free data set from Microsoft used for demonstrating purposes. So it's a sample company. This isn't anyone's data in particular, but it's available for you to download and when you're testing out reports that you want to see. So this is a sample that we've inherited. It's called Sales Metrics. We get it, and there are some improvements we can make to take this report to the next level. So the first thing I see, I have 3 cards up here in the upper right-hand corner. They're off. They're in that half of the report. They're kind of skewed to the left a little. We want to fix that. So the easiest way that we can do that is we want to line this total customers up with the visual below it. So what we're going to do is highlight both of these, and Power BI has this nice little alignment feature. We can align it to the right. So that solves that problem. However, now these are not symmetrical. What we can do is easily grab them, and in that same area, the same alignment, we can distribute them horizontally. Where did they go? I think we lost them there for a second. Let's try that again. There we go. So now we could have done this manually using our math. We could have looked at each of these, the positions, and calculated pretty simply. But I wanted to demonstrate that after you get used to using the math, you can do these kinds of things quickly with the alignment feature. So now that is symmetrical, it's spaced out, it looks a little more professional, and it doesn't look off to our brain. This also leaves us room later on if our boss says, I want to add another metric, another KPI to the top. We have room. We can juggle things around and not throw off the general layout of the report. So that's one thing we can do, that we've improved this report. Notice our total sales. Sales are in currency, dollars, right? And this is a sales report. We really want that to be showing as currency. That might be our most important part of this story, is how much money we've made, how many sales have we made. So what has happened here is whoever wrote the report originally just did took the total amount of each individual sale and did a sum here. What we want to do is we want to write a DAX formula that does a sum, but allows us to use currency. So let's replace the aggregation done through Power BI with our DAX formula. And let's add a dollar sign there. Little things will take us to the next level. So we've already done it here, and so it kind of looks a little unprofessional, like we put the % sign, but not the dollar sign. So another thing I want to point out, notice we have a slicer up here, sales territory. One thing I see a lot is not using the drop down. So remember, limited real estate, 1280 by 720. We don't have room to put this as checkboxes. That takes a lot of real estate to show all those checkboxes for something we may only use for a few seconds. So we pick our southeast and it disappears back into the drop box. We don't want that taking up a lot of our space. So that is one item that we can do. Another thing we can do that's a fairly new feature are these filters, this filter pane. This is nice. We have sales territory over here. This will translate, as long as this eyeball is visual, that means the user is going to see it when we deploy it to the service. They can use this filter pane to change any filters that we designate ahead of time. So not just having a slicer here, we could remove this slicer altogether and have this sales territory as a slicer. We can also add other slicers that aren't there. So let's see. Say we drop a package. And the user will see this off to the side. I'll show you that in a few minutes when we move on to the next tab and we deploy that to the service. You can also hide these filters. So you can make page level filters, visual level filters. So say I want to exclude 2013 from this visual. Notice these filters over here. I can say greater than or equal to 2014. I didn't change any of the other visuals. Visually, only that one visual, I've limited it. Now, if I choose to hide this filter, maybe I don't want my end user seeing that I've filtered the data by a certain year. I can also lock this filter, which prevents them from changing it once we deploy it into the service and they are actually using it. So if I don't want them changing it, but I do want them to see it, I just use the lock icon. If I don't want them to see it at all or change it, I hide it with the little slash through the eyeball. I hope that makes sense. Feel free, please, to ask questions in the chat room, in the Q&A in the chat room, and Justin will interject and on your behalf. So we also have this filters area is fairly new feature. So feel free to use that if you feel like your real estate is being dominated over here by all the slicers that you're using. That's another option. So let's move on to the next tab. We have a similar report called purchasing. I don't know if you noticed, but look at the boxes. So see over here in sales metrics, this is a technique I like to use, and I think it looks great. Notice there's a subtle gray background here on the report. The visuals that I've chosen, I have a white background. That gives a little bit more professional image. A lot of times I see black boxes, blue boxes around the visuals, and psychologically speaking, those boxes show delineation, like separation. It's kind of like your backyard in your neighborhood. My fence is there for my yard and your fence is there for your yard. They're not connected. You don't go into my yard, I don't go into your yard. Well, Power BI is totally interactive. Remember, we could click on any of these items and it changes by default all the other visuals. We don't want to send the message that we are separating these things. Like, I don't want to put boxes around each of these visuals because psychologically that says they are separated. They are not related to this other visual. We want an open canvas that's all connected and all interactive. So in the future, try to refrain from using boxes. Instead, use this gray background, light blue, something really subtle, and then it delineates the boxes more aesthetically pleasing. So notice we have square boxes, light gray background, white visuals. Purchasing, we have rounded boxes. We've kind of taken it to the next level. This is a new feature. If you haven't seen this, I'm going to show you how to do it. So we have this visual. We go to the border. We don't want a black or blue or red, something really dominant. We want a light color, a shading. So, excuse me, I chose a little bit darker gray than the background. And you could choose the same color as the background because if you're using the white background for the visual. So what we do is that we set this radius. The radius is what gives us the little corner. So notice that little corner is there and it gives us a different look. Now, if you're doing multiple pages on your Power BI reports, you want these to be uniform. We don't want to have this page of sales metrics with squares and then this other page with rounded squares. We want everything to be cohesive and the same. Same goes for colors, fonts. If you have the report and it's 10 or 11 pages, and as the user goes from page to page, and everything is different sizes, different fonts, different colors, that's a form of cognitive overload. They don't look connected. We want them to be cohesive. So how do we do that in Power BI? I'm glad you asked. We have themes. Now, early on, the themes were very difficult to work with. Now that we have this office style toolbar here at the top, I can easily choose from several default themes. And you see these are the different ones. So I could choose this title theme. Everything changes automatically. Notice the titles change color, everything changed. I don't really like that one, and I saved this one before we did that. I did my own and called it Corporate Blue because my company has shades of blue in their logo. So I made a theme, and I can apply that theme to every report that I do. And you should, if you're going to provide a cohesive reporting experience. You want everything to be standard. You don't want two different developers choosing different fonts, different sizes, different colors, and then it looks like a hodgepodge of stories. That's not what we want. We want one cohesive story and everything to be uniform to our standards. So we want to set a reporting standard, set it as a theme, and use that. So I hope that makes sense. Notice here, I'm not using a lot of color. A lot of times color also provides cognitive overload. It's one company. I don't need to see these different suppliers as purple, brown, yellow, red, orange. It's too much. It's too much to process. I'm one company. Why can't these be blue? I am trying to determine which one has more purchases. I'm not looking at, oh, orange is Litware, purple is Fabricam. I need, as a user, I need to process the data quickly, thoroughly, and move on. I don't need to spend a lot of time looking at the legend, trying to figure out which color is which data point is tied to a different color. This makes more sense and it's more cohesive. So I hope that is clear and makes sense. Please feel free to email me after we're done if you have questions about that. It makes a much better reporting experience.
One question for you, Ed.
Sure.
Says, can you lock a slider from the user on the report canvas like you can do on the filters pane?
No. So you want to lock, I'm guessing, this slicer on the report filter. No, that's not possible. Only on the filters tab. If it's here on the report itself, it is fair game. So good question though. Notice, like in the sales metrics, I see this a lot. We have a KPI, total purchases, 8,000 purchases. That's not very professional looking. We need a comma. And really, what we need is a DAX formula, because I'll show you why. When I built this report and I deploy it and users start using it, what happens is someone says, hey, I really want to see how great Steel Gray is doing. What is blank? So by default, when there's no data in there, it doesn't default to 0. It defaults to blank. It's very unprofessional. We can avoid that easily. So when we use our DAX formula that we've created, let's go ahead and replace it so I can show you what it looks like. We use the is blank. So we're doing a count on purchase key, how many purchases were made, how many purchase records are there. I want to say if it's blank, give me 0, otherwise give me the count. Well, that's great. That's much better. Notice also in the formatting up in the toolbar, I have a comma. So if we go back to all, I have 8,367 purchases. These are little details and they take a small amount of time, but we want to take those reports to the next level. We want them to be amazing and not distracting, and we want to tell a story. And this is how we do it. So notice.
Another question for you.
Okay, sure.
It says, what is the most overlooked enhancement that someone omits but could bring real value to a numerical report, in your opinion?
I would say, so can you repeat that again just to make sure I heard it right?
What's the most overlooked enhancement that someone omits but could bring real value to numerical report?
I would say the is blank. I'm assuming we're talking about here the card, the numerical portion of it. I would say is blank with 0. Also, and that's important, like if we're doing any kind of calculations and we get a divide by 0, we want to use is blank to make sure that if one of those values, like say we're dividing for a percentage, we want to make sure that those convert properly to 0. And then we have formatting. That's a big deal. I mean, we're telling a story like here with sales. I want the dollar sign. I want to know that it's money. So notice we use the same theme on this one as we did on the last. It's cohesive. The only thing we did different was the boxes, just to show you the difference. Also want to point out this matrix table. The matrix table, there are two kinds of tables in Power BI. The regular table that we've all seen with rows and columns and everything repeats. And you can go back and forth. Let's show you. So if we use a regular table, notice all the repeating values. Whereas if we use a matrix table, we get things that duplicate as one item. So we don't see NA 50 times. And we can also roll these up or roll them down with totals and subtotals. So if this is important to me to be able to slice through this data in all different kinds of ways without a bunch of slicers on the page. So like I want to see all of the NA items, all of the Northwind items, all the black items. Those all can do this very easily. It's very interactive, and it's much more, say, interactive than the regular table. And this is kind of, it's there. Okay, we get it. So this is a nice little feature to set your report apart. So earlier I talked about the filters here on the report. Let's take a look and see. This is that same report deployed. Notice, so what the user sees when they log into Power BI, they see our tabs over here and this little filter pane over here. There's the filters that we were talking about. I can change sales territory in the filter pane, so I don't even need this slicer here. I've just freed up some real estate. I can go and choose them over here, which also lets me type in, let's say I have a long list. There, I can see Southeast and Southwest. It's a little bit nicer feature, especially if territory and real estate is tight. Take it out of the report, use it in the filter pane. Also notice, let's see, let's go back to it. Over here, I put a filter in called subregion and I locked it. So I just want to show you. If I had set this to a certain region and deployed it, you could see the value here, but it's locked. I cannot change it. Also, this one's city. Let's say I had set this to Atlanta and hidden it with the little slash through the eyeball and deployed it. And I did not set it here, city is all in this example, but notice it's hidden. If we go back over, it's not there. So if I need them to not know what I filtered by, it's hidden. Now you could do both of them. Doesn't really matter. The eyeball hides it so they can't change anything. So you don't need to lock it necessarily. But if you lock it, they can still see it. They just can't change it. So New features to keep in mind. This is kind of exciting because it gives us a little more territory. We can put lots of them here on this filter pane and scroll up and down and free up our real estate for more bigger visuals, more beautiful visuals. So let's go back. Let's see, I think we've covered everything here in this section and in purchasing. So we have a second report for the second half of this, part two different Power BI reports, because we had two different data sets. I wanted to show different examples. So we're going to flip the record over and go to the next one. So here, this is a publicly available Power BI report that was done by this gentleman who has a blog, Data Chant. Does great work. He puts these out. This is not a knock on him. I just wanted to show it as an example of how we inherit a Power BI report and how we can improve it and make it a little better. So like I said, he does good stuff. This isn't a knock on him. It's just a freely available one that was a good example of how to take a report and move it to the next level. So he puts out this COVID-19 global cases. There's a lot of data on here. It's almost cognitive overload. We have 6 visuals down here, a table, and 6 up here. Really, 4 visuals is kind of the, psychologically speaking, is kind of the limit. You don't want any more data than that. We can have a few KPIs at the top, but really, this is 13 items. It's a lot to take in. It's cognitive overload. So first, we want to take care of that. Second, some things here, like we see on the left-hand side, we see 4 different cards, but there's 3 on one line and 1 on another. That's a little off and off-putting. And we see 2 visuals above that. So it's not a cohesive story, and it's something that we can improve upon fairly easily. Also, these 2 visuals don't seem to have a title. They don't have an axis. Not really sure what you're looking at until you hover over it. That takes a lot of work. Your brain should look at a visual and know within a second or two what's going on. So we're going to look at, this is the original chart, and then we're going to look at the improved one. So over here, I've taken his report, which is a great report, and I've made the 4 cards on the same level. So we have total confirmed, daily new cases, total deaths, and death rate all even on one line. It's a little bit clearer. Also, I realized what he was doing is these 2 visuals were related to the card below it. So daily new cases was shown visually above the card. Well, so what I did is took those visuals and made them a tooltip chart. So this is a great feature if you haven't seen it. When you hover over this data point, we get a tooltip to display. So I can see a visual representation of total confirmed, daily new cases, death rate. It doesn't take up my real estate, and it adds another layer of data to something that I'm looking at directly. So how do we do those? You see down here on the screen, they have the little eyeball, so they're hidden, the eyeball with a line through it. What you want to do is go to a new page, click on the little paintbrush, page size tooltip. So remember we talked early on 16 by 9. You can choose tooltip. And then not only do you have to do that, you have to go to page information, give it a name, and say tooltip on. Now it's a tooltip. It's going to give you a limited real estate. We don't get the whole big screen. We get this one little area where this square is showing. We do our visual, and then we come back, select the card, go to our tooltip, say report page as the type, and then select the one that we created and named. And now it was that easy. And now when we hover over it, we see the tooltip report. That's pretty cool. So that's the first thing I did. I took that. So notice we freed up some real estate. He had 2 sets of lines to do those. So his table was kind of half of the bottom. We were able to move that up and give it more room so that you can read. Also, I did a theme. So we had this nice little visual of COVID with the maroon and pink colors. So took that and made that a theme and gave everything the same color scheme. So it looks a little more cohesive instead of this predominantly black with a little bit of red. Instead, we highlight the maroon color and it looks a little more professional. So another thing we did, these 6 visuals, we want to see those visuals. We want to have the depth of those reports be visual. So because there are 3 different areas in our report, confirmed cases, new cases, and deaths, we're able to set up bookmarks. If you haven't used bookmarks, bookmarks are very powerful, and they allow you to hide or show visuals and assign it to a bookmark. So in this example, we have, let's see, let me show you that. So you look at bookmarks and the selection pane. So by default, we're looking at confirmed. So the eyeball is there, we can see it, and we're hiding these other visuals. So we create essentially, it's almost like in this case 3 different reports, but it's really one report with 3 options. We set different bookmarks and we can press a button and simulate an application. So to the user experience, it feels like this is an application showing different things when I press the button. So here I see new cases. Looks like our data is out of whack, so we'll hit refresh to get the visuals to come back. But I can choose, there we go. I can choose the different buttons and show different bookmarks. Essentially, we're on one screen, but bookmarks allow us to hide and show different things, so it appears like it's more than that. A new feature, if you're already using bookmarks, so let's look at this button. We have the button text confirmed. We can assign it a color in our theme and different layout options. Now we have on hover, on press, and disabled. We're getting more of an application type feel. So I've set a different color for on hover. So when I hover over that, it changes to black. And then when I do the physical pressing, it's like an orangish, it's a lighter maroon. So it feels interactive, like I'm actually doing something a la kind of the old Windows applications that we used to make, but it gives us an experience. So we're seeing, hey, I know that that's a button, not just a rectangle. So back to the report, what we've done is taken these 6 very small visuals that were hard to read and put 2 on the screen at a time, made them much bigger, much better for our story, and separated them with a button. So whichever one is important to us, that's the one we can click on. And we can see better, so it's a much better story. Another thing I did, this total deaths by date, we have this ability in Power BI to do trend lines, forecasting. I took his normal line chart and added a forecast feature on there. So here I get this is our total deaths by date, the data, but I have a forecast. I can see where this could go. That's helpful for revenue, sales, all those different kind of metrics we're looking at. And all I did was a couple of clicks, added a forecast feature to it. Boom, next level. So these are things I'd like to point out for you to help with your reports. Maybe you haven't seen them. Power BI is updating monthly. New features are coming out monthly. It's hard to keep up, but there's a lot of new stuff out there and things to make your reports a lot better. So I hope this helps. Another thing we did, and it's minor, but this date slicer, it was kind of nice when Power BI came out with this. It allows you to change the dates rapidly instead of typing it in. Well, what happens, what Power BI does is if you make this wide, it doesn't move this end date out to be symmetrical. So you have this weird bar with two circles that's really wide, the width of the item itself, but the box doesn't accommodate for that. It's little nuances, but I think it looks better. They're lined up, they're symmetrical. Psychologically, this is better. And it's not hard to move that around. It doesn't provide any extra oomph if we make it wider. One of the things he did that I do like on here is this custom visual that allows you to search. So it's not a default Microsoft visual. But if I have a lot of data in this report, and sometimes searching is essential, this is a nice feature. And he did the Tooltip report in here, so that was good, and I like that. But what I added is a drill through. So if you have a table and you want to show a little bit of data, but your user wants to drill through and see more data, let's show what that looks like. So United Kingdom, maybe I want to see what that means. That's a lot of different places that make up the United Kingdom, like similar to the United States. I want to see provincial information for them. So I did a drill through here to provincial. And I got another report. I don't have a page for that because I've hidden it. So what I did was I duplicated the original report, changed the visuals on the right to a big map. And because our color scheme was kind of maroon and gray, I changed the map to be a grayscale. So we're keeping that visual effectiveness with our mapping. And I didn't want this to be really wide because if we go back, remember we had country here. I did not want to show country because we're drilling down. So we'll replace that with the province, left everything else the same. So we still get the tooltip. But what if I forget which one I clicked on? Because I took it out of the table, I can put it in the title. So one of the things that Power BI has as a new feature are functions for titles. So this title is COVID-19 provincial cases, which is hard-coded. I can set this function, or that's the text in the area. Because I'm only looking at one country, I can choose first country and see United Kingdom. So if I turn the title off, all you get is the text box, COVID-19. But now with that function on the title, I can add the country and take this to the next level. I do the same thing over here on the map, but let's say I want to add more to that. Like this one, confirm cases and deaths for provinces in United Kingdom. I can't do that. I can't create a whole bunch of different pages. I can make this interactive though, and do the title here. But wait, it says based on a field. I can make a DAX formula. Here I called it map title. Let's see what that looks like. So I put it in world population. Map title equals, there's my string, confirm cases, and then selected value. We only have one value because we're filtered by United Kingdom. So I can programmatically set that to be interactive. So when you do drill throughs, you're given this little arrow, which for the user experience is to go back where you came from. We can choose another one, another country, and drill through. But notice the title's changed. We can do this all day. We can go back and forth. These are little features, little enhancements that take your reports to the next level. We have one page, but we've extended that to so much more data available. And that is hidden, so the user can't find it, go to it, they have to drill through to it. So if we want to look at that, let's go to the Provincial Page, because it has to be the destination. We set, notice over here, the country is where, we're not setting it there, but you can see that's where the filter is. So we're saying, and these, they have to be related. So we have to make sure country is related to province, so in our data set. But I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps. Do we have any questions?
We just had one question about whether this would be provided afterwards, and yes, we are recording these, and they usually are posted within a few business days onto Improving's YouTube channel.
Yeah, and we'll have, there's nothing proprietary here. We'll have these, it's two different Power BI desktop files. We'll make that available to you. Let's see, so we had the theme, we had the bookmarks. Bookmarks work with the selection criteria, so you hide or show. We did the drill through. See, this is a normal tooltip which reports data, but over here we have a visual report tooltip. And I think we have covered everything. Notice all the hidden tooltips here in our report and our hidden drill through page. Maps are very powerful. I like to use maps. Great visual representation. If we go back to our other report, and remember, it's totally interactive. So if we clicking on our map, we're also changing our data here.
So a question about the when you're drilling through, do you always have to use the reset button?
The reset button. I think, do you think they're asking about this button, the back button?
It says, do you always have to use a reset button on the drill through page? Otherwise, it just stays the same.
So if this is actually a back button that takes us back to where we came from. So it's not really a reset button. If we were to select this report again, they would not be able to get back to Provincial. We can in the desktop, but if they were to choose the tab down here instead of the arrow to go back, it would just come back to this page, and they would have to pick a new drill through. So it's always gonna reset after we select a new one.
All right. And then I have one that says, do you have to set up a new table for provinces?
No. So if we look at the data they have, the province and country are in the same table. So, and that's why it works. You could have a country table as long as they're all related. Like here is this population is for different visual. It controls the density and population for another calculation. But because they're in the same table, it makes it fine. If they were in other tables, there would just have to be a relationship between the two. Which also brings up another thing I wanted to show real quick. Let's go back to the other. I hope that answered the question. A lot of times when we're pulling in data from tables, we have information that we don't necessarily want the user to see. Like this, this is purchase. Our purchase key is a number that's used for primary key indexing. It doesn't provide any value to the user. We can hide these and they won't ever see it. So when it's deployed, those are nice little features that keep your data clean for the user so they don't see data that doesn't apply. Do we have any? If we don't have any other questions, I wanted to thank everyone for coming. Please feel free. I'll put the slide up here again with my contact information. Please feel free to email me, follow me on Twitter, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me your questions. I'd love to help. If you'd like for us to help you, to help you with your Power BI project, we'd love to help. And I do appreciate everyone coming out today. I hope you learned at least something to take back to the office and make your Power BI reports, take them to the next level so you are ready for a raise and a promotion. I hope that for everybody. And I want to thank you all for coming out and thank you for joining us. Did we have any final questions?
Nope, that is it.
Okay, I appreciate everybody. Stay safe and thank you for coming.